Oh boy. What's going on, guys? How we doing?
All right.
All right. Hmm. Heck, I thought more people would come in. We'll see how it goes. How you guys doing this week?
Doing okay.
Right on. Jesus, how you doing?
Um, Good so far. uh, I have seen those flowers, and that's so cool. Um, I'm I'm wondering if there's like an agenda for these after hours.
Kind of, sort of. The last three I was pretty much doing live coding, right?
Yeah.
And today I was just gonna kind of review everything that we've done. And it looks like I'm also going to be touching on deployment to Heroku as well. I've had quite a few questions about that. Just giving everybody a chance to get situated in here. What's up, Jacob?
Hey, I'm in a new place right now.
I see that. Hanging out outside, catching some rays.
Yeah,
Oh, right on. Got the munchkin with you. Right
yep.
on. It's good to get out. I need some more vitamin D, man. I've been trapped in my room for like 3 weeks. It sucks.
I have a question about parameters for links for gets.
Yeah, what's up?
How are they supposed to be laid out? Are all of them, like, for example, yours yesterday started with query question mark function? Are they all going to be like that, or they're all
Mm.
organized differently, or
They can be
um
organized a little bit differently. Some require a whole string of back or forward slash to put in the um, like some are organized along routes where they take a route and then option name, option name, option name, right? Um, I've seen API structured that way, and if they take it in standard HTTP request format, then yeah, it'll be question mark the
or query question
variable
mark?
equals and then the value. Let me real quick.
Question mark variable equal.
Yeah, question mark variable equals value. Let me see. Hang on. It's for like, yeah. Okay. I'm just finding stuff on URL encoding. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. But no, typically you just have to follow the directions for each individual API. It'll tell you how to structure your requests. Okay. Sometimes you'll have to do it through the URL, and then sometimes you'll just follow a unique path um, that defines what kind of response you get.
Oh, and if I wanted to add another parameter, would I add a like a slash? So like
Maybe
slash question mark variable equals something slash question mark variable equals,
not
or is it just
always.
one question mark or?
Yeah, it's usually just one question mark, and then um, like with Alpha Vantage, it's the question mark query,
Hmm.
and then function. Yeah, question mark query function equals, and then ampersand symbol equals ampersands, period
Oh,
equals
yeah.
ampersand.
I forgot about that ampersand.
But that's not always how it works. So let me
Yeah,
demonstrate
yeah, yeah.
um, why that's not exactly how that works all the ways. Let me see here. Let me pull up my thing. Got 7 people in here. I didn't realize there's already so many people. What's up, Jacob? Chris? Chris, I meant Chris.
It's
My
good.
bad. Jacob's
Sounds
right
like
underneath you, and I saw Jacob's face. I was like, Jacob, no, Chris. I meant Chris. All right, let's take a look here.
Still here. I got another month here now.
Yeah, right on. Okay, pull this up, and I'll share my screen. Okay, so let's talk about how sometimes when APIs are set up, they can be set up in a variety of ways. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Here's an example. If I wanted to set up an API, let's say I had data in a database and I wanted to make it accessible, um, barring for the moment organizing my app a little bit differently to suit this new purpose, I would include a route, right? So I would say app.route, and then I would start constructing a URL route, okay? And the way that I construct it, let me come up with a hypothetical situation here. Let's say I have let's say I'm doing rentals, right? And let's say that I have a number of areas, um, and then in each area, you can filter results by the type of property. So apartment, single family home, um, stuff like that, right? Type of home or type of property that it is, and then um, rental length, right? I don't know, I'm making this up. So let's say I had those 3 different types of parameters that you could give. And in my documentation, I say you'll construct your URL by providing options for these 3 parameters, right, in your query, or by hitting just the base. So how can I do that? Let me demonstrate. If you wanted, if you want to pass parameters in through a URL or through your route, you can do that by using these carets, right? Left and right, less than, or less than, greater than signs, and then passing in a name, something that you're going to refer to this in your Python code, right? So let's say that I have area / type / length. Okay. This is just one example. Okay. Um, and then you could have, right, and then you would do the same thing, methods, or methods equals, and then get post, right? And then I would have a new function that would return um, the response to this route. Okay, and the way this is going to be set up, it may be a little bit different, but not unlike regular Python, where area, type, and length are going to be variables that are passed into my function. Okay, and as you probably have guessed, the way that we're going to do that is defining the function, right? So this would be API response, area, type, length. Make sense? That makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So this is one way that APIs can be constructed. They may take parameters in this form, or they may take parameters in the form of URL encoding. So there's a number of ways that this can be done. This is just one of them. Okay.
Oh, so that's like a route where if you want to like set certain parameters for a URI link.
Hmm. So what if I wanted to query my database and I wanted the user to be able to define um, what they were looking at? Or
Mm.
maybe I constructed links to a page that displays data dynamically from my database, but makes a new URL, right, for each item based on its ID. Then I would need to define a route that takes a dynamic ID, right, and so then constructs a URL on the fly. It's going a little above and beyond, right? Kind of the stuff that we've really talked about, but this is just something to think about. You can do a lot. This is very powerful stuff. Cool. All right. So I think do you guys want to talk about deployment to Heroku, or do you want to start from the ground up reviewing the application for like building a Flask app?
I guess the ground up, since Heroku is more of a stretch goal.
Yep. Mm,
Okay. Cool. So let's talk about this from the ground up. All right. It's going to be more interactive. I think would we probably benefit more if you guys answered most of the questions, right?
Kind of a side note, what happens
Yeah.
if we didn't have like a bunch of different files? What if we just put it all into one?
You can. That's going to be a long, complex, very hard to read and understand file, but it can be done.
So if tomorrow we do that, would we be penalized?
I don't think so. I would be mad at you.
You would be mad at me?
I would be mad at you. If I had to grade that, I'd be mad at you. Like, why would you do this to me? But that being said, it would just come up like, really, man? And then also, yeah, you passed or no.
I feel like 90% of my issues are imports from one file to the next. It's just me just forgetting something.
It's not that you're forgetting something. I think it's that maybe the context for how these imports works.
Maybe.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. I'll definitely make a point to bring that up. Okay, so let's talk about creating an application. Okay, this is not unlike what we did in the first sprint where you actually built a Python package. You're doing exactly that. It's just a package that's going to end up being served through a web browser, right? But it is essentially the same thing. Okay, let's talk about these folders. Okay, ignoring this because we don't care about it. Okay, you have web app. What is web app? What are we going to refer to this as?
the root.
This is the root and or parent directory. Okay, we'll say that this is not going to be referred to at all. If it is, we're referring to it as the root or the parent. It has nothing to do with our application or how our application works. Okay, all of that is done in this folder. What are we going to refer to that as?
Package.
It's in the name.
Yeah.
No question.
The app. This is the application, right? Everything in here is what's being served. Okay, now we do have some helpers in here. Don't need that. Go away. We do have some helper things in here. So let's talk about what they are. The .env. What does this .env do?
Hides your secret credentials.
Exactly. It's a place to store things that you don't want other people to have access to, like your Postgres database URL, which has your username and password, right? That's pretty sensitive. API keys that maybe are proprietary and you would get in trouble if you shared. Secret keys that keep your website or your web app safe from hacker attacks, right? Cross-site attacks and stuff like that, right? So anything that you want, or rather need your app to have access to, but don't want anyone else having access to, right? You want to put in this .env. This .env gets translated when you upload. Rather host this on a platform, okay? And typically what you'll do is you'll define configuration variables, right? Through your platform service. On Heroku, it's literally config vars, right? But for the time being, while we're working locally, you'll just have a .env. This is not required for your sprint challenge. though it is very useful skill to have, right? Like in reality, you'll be expected to use this, right? If you're not, what's wrong with you? Anyways, moving on, we have a config.py. Now this one is a little, I don't think he really covered config.py. I think he probably loaded everything in a init. But if you have a config.py, it's a place where you can create a class, a config class, and this is essentially unabstracting your .env, right? This would be made available, but as you can see, it kind of abstracts away the actual values for various things that you put in your env. Using the OS package, it's able to actually grab up those values and store them in a secure way. So no one who wanted to peer into your code would have access to what these are. Right? They would only work in production. Cool. What's the pip file and the pip file.lock?
Environment stuff.
Environment stuff. Okay. Anybody else?
It has all your installed packages and dependencies.
Exactly. It defines what packages we're going to be using to work on this app, right? Inside your in your packages brackets here, you should have all of the packages that you're actually using that the application is actually using. Let me be specific here. Okay. Everything else should go in dev packages. Why is that?
It doesn't have them installed, correct? It's just what, like,
the pip file just says what they are. Yeah,
right.
The pip file just says what they are. The pip file.lock records the hash from the installed package. So unless it's installed successfully, there is no entry of it in pip file.lock. Does that make sense? Okay. And then we got a cool run.py. Everyone should know what this is, right? You import your create app factory from the application init, and then you use this run.py to actually execute that command. Make sense? This actually serves up a Flask development server for you. Okay? It's not sufficient for production environment.
That part makes me a little confused because you are importing the same function you have already there.
What do you mean?
You are importing create app and you have create app in the same file.
So I don't actually. Let me show you what this is. Create app is being imported from the application directory. This is the package, right? This is the application. I'm importing a function from it. So because I've only defined the application, by default, it's going to look in the init, this file here. Okay. If I had, for instance, if I have other files here and I did from app.routes, then it would say, okay, init, but then also I need to go to routes.py to get this function, right?
So why don't you put app equals create? Why don't you call that in the init file? Why do you make a separate run.py file?
Oh, this is just so that I can run it from here. This is purely for me.
Okay, so it's just easier than doing Flask run, whatever. You just do run.py.
Yeah, I think it is. Okay. That's why I do it this way. And executing app.run, you're actually getting the application context. This is actually a method of the Flask object, which is now being, the application was constructed using a Flask object. We're accessing a method of that here in .run, which starts the Flask development server. Okay, so that's why I was telling you this is just like really shorthand. It allows me to come into Python and do Python run.py and go, right?
So you don't have to set the Flask variable?
I have no Flask variable defined anywhere.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Why do they have us do that then? I mean, that's clearly kind of an easier way to do it.
I don't know. I have no idea. I couldn't tell you.
I just didn't know if you found anything.
No, I have no idea. This is the way I learned how to do it, so this is just the way I've continued to do it. But yeah, no, that's a good question. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer to it. I have no idea. I know that you can assign a Flask variable and then run flask.run from anywhere that has access to that environment variable. So technically, I suppose If you're working on a very large project, then that would be a boon, right? Because no matter where you are in that directory, you could run your application, right? Um, but since this is a really basic application and I typically leave my terminal parked in the root directory, it's just easy to be able to pull my terminal up, you know, Python run.py and then close my terminal down, right? I don't have to worry about where I'm at.
So when you make, I know we said we're not going to do Heroku, but when you make the proc file for Heroku, is it still the same everything?
Kind of, sort of.
Okay.
And you'll remember that your proc file looks something like, and let's actually just make that real quick. All right, your proc file looks something like, and I'm doing this from the top of my head, web, unicorn, and then some quotes here. In my case, it would be app, but I think he had web underscore app. The name of the folder, and then the function to create the app with the invoking parentheses. So it would look something like this, right? This is essentially what it would look like. And again, this is basically the same thing. Import from app, import create app, and then it just knows to run that as the function. And that's part of why they have it set up this weird kind of way. But again, it just goes into here, executes all this code, but then grabs this function and then imports that into its environment and does whatever the heck it does, which I assume is a similar process for this, right? Because in the end, it runs the server. So yeah, never quite fully figured out why we're specifying that, but I have to assume that it has something to do with this, right?
I've been watching previous lectures, and they do it slightly different, but it's essentially doing the same thing. They're calling the variable instead of app create.app. They whatever they made the app equals create.app, so they're calling it in there instead of putting in parentheses.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's another way you could do it. And one of the crappiest things about Flask, I will not say crappiest, excuse my language. One of the things that I don't love about Flask is that there is 1,000 ways to do everything, right? It's like the opposite of the Zen of Python, right? There's 100 ways to do every single thing, and any one of them is valid. So if you find a way that works, that's the right way to do it. Okay? Simple as that. All right, cool. So we have these. We've gone over all of these things, right? Run.py is just a shortcut to get the application started. So where's the application? What is the application? When you create the folder that's going to house your application, the first thing you'll construct is the init. This is a special file that Python uses to determine, right, what the application is. It sets the context for this whole thing, right? So if we put it here, then it knows that this folder is referring to the application, okay? And everything in here is part of this app, right? It understands that. This becomes, at the risk of confusing people, this becomes underscore underscore name underscore underscore, okay? This is now the directory from which anything you do in the application is run. Okay, that's why even though I executed my application from run.py with my terminal parked in the root directory, when I create my database tables, my DB populates inside my app folder. Why is that? Because create app is parked inside this app. And by the time this executes, Python has the directory that it's operating in as the name, right? So that's where it shows up at. And it shows up there because I have it set to a relative file path. Okay. Did I lose anybody?
Another side note, could you have anyone who accesses your website's IP address stashed into that database?
Theoretically, yeah. You would just need to add some code that does that. In fact, I think, if I recall correctly,
Not no one's going to visit my apps.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that it logs everything. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is the log from where it was accessed, and then this is what they accessed, how they accessed it, and the response code.
Oh, I know your computer does, but I don't think it doesn't cache it. Oh, you think Heroku does too?
Mhm. They do. At least up to some, I don't know how long of a log that they keep, but I know it does.
I
Okay.
mean, you could do it through Google Analytics too, but
True. Yeah. There's a whole number of ways you could do it. So yeah, let's break down this create app function here. So this is the part where we actually assign the variable to the Flask object. And you'll notice again, here's that funky underscore underscore name underscore underscore. And I just talked about what this is, right? We're passing this in because we need to pass in the folder that is the application. This is going to roll everything into one, right? Now Flask knows that this app, this whole folder and all of its contents are part of this variable app, right? We're kind of now combining all of this. And that is why, for the record, this dot notation works. Okay, because now we're importing from ourselves. It's a fun fact. Yeah, so create app has the Flask. We create this object. I use this because our config is not in the same directory as the application. Our config is outside. So I say, hey, it's not instance relative, and then now it's not going to be looking in name. It's going to go one directory up to our root directory because that's where our terminal is, and then look for the file name and the class name. So this is expected to be a Python file. So .py is not really required, and then it's going to look for the class config. This will break if it's not set up correctly, right? And it'll tell you this doesn't work. It'll error. Okay, and then we init our app. Rather, we connect our DB instance, which is SQL Alchemy, to the application. Now, SQL Alchemy object knows about the application. Okay, and SQL Alchemy is the one that's looking for, these right here. Anything prefixed with SQL Alchemy is looking for, right? And as soon as it knows about the app, it knows about the configuration of the app, and it has access to the database URI and other config variables that we set. Okay, so all that takes place right at that moment. Then I open up app context. What does that even mean? Well, I'm gonna skim along the top of this. Okay, when you are working with your app variable, you are working with the outside shell of a coconut. Okay, app context would be the equivalent of cracking that coconut open and then messing around on the inside. Right? You're going under the hood. Right? Why do I want to do that? Well, the reason why I want to do that is because I want to import my routes. That's just kind of a side effect, but I want to be able to access this sort of global method, create all, right? If anyone's played around with this, you probably noticed that if you do this outside of the application context, it doesn't work. Why? Because there's no engine for SQL Alchemy. Okay, DB has to be executed inside the application context in order to have the SQL Alchemy engine hooked up to the relative file path and be able to create the tables based on your models file. Okay, all of that information is stored here. So there's this weird sort of, I almost want to say meta type of merry-go-round happening with this app variable, right, in this Flask instance. And it does get a little bit confusing. But I've simplified it for myself anyways by just saying routes and also, so let me back up a little bit. Any blueprints that you have only need to be registered here, right? You can register that in your create app function to create the global app, right? That works. The only thing that needs to go in app context, really, technically, this could be moved out of here down to here, and it would still work. Okay. I think you would actually just have to do from app import routes instead of dot. Okay. However, I don't think that that's very effective. So I choose to do it this way. Okay. No, I would have to then say app, or so then I would have to create app and then do import routes. Yeah, no, it's a whole mess of stuff that I would have to change. But doing it this way just kind of simplifies matters a little bit. Likewise with the database, creating the tables from the models file that it has access to when it's in app context. Fun fact, you can do this from the REPL. You can do it the exact same way, right? So if I actually do this with app.app.context and then call that, and then I do db.createAll, it'll create a database with all my tables, right there. So it's pretty cool. But then it returns the app, and that's what we want, right? So that's the whole part. This is where the magic happens. Okay, so when we go to routes, now we've imported routes into the application with app context open. But remember I told you there was a funny little merry-go-round going on? Well, if we go to routes, we import the current app as app right into our in routes. So by the time that it gets through all of this, and here's the important thing, Python executes all the code from top to bottom anytime you do an import. So if you're wondering why this import is down here and not up here, the reason is you can't put it up here or it won't work. It'll say no such thing as current app because app was never made before it hit routes. Does that make sense? It would hit this import, jump over here, start executing this code, and break right here. It would say there's no current app as app. That's not a thing. Make sense? So we want to create the app first, then import everything else after that's been done. All right, so the weird little merry-go-round thing kind of jumps back and forth real fast, but not a big deal. We've got the app created. The app thing already exists because we instantiate it before we do the import. So it has access to models, right? Which is what, in the end, that's what we wanted anyway. That's why we want DB there. So we import models, DB, and all that stuff. So this is our routes folder, routes file now that we've moved into. This is where all the logic happens for all the endpoints. Who remembers what this app route decorator, what does it do?
Just send you to the home.
No, I don't mean this one in particular. I meant all of them. What is their function? Anybody remember?
When you call them in the search bar, it brings you to where you need it to go.
It definitely has something to do with the URL bar, yeah. What does it do to the URL bar? Or rather, I should say do with the URL bar.
It just gives it like destinations on where to go and what to do on a certain page.
Close, very close. It does dictate what should be done at a given location, but it doesn't provide the location. You do. What does this record decorator do? Anybody else want to give it a shot? Chris, you can smile it.
With methods, you choose, like, you either choose get or post to decide whether you're taking data or like adding data, getting data, or posting data.
True, yeah, but this is just telling you what's allowed on this route. Yeah, it's not basically, it has nothing to do with what's actually going on. It's just telling you that if it's anything other than these, it'll error, right? No, this is actually monitoring the URL bar. Okay, so take out the 127.0.0.1, which is localhost. Take that out, and what's left, right? If there's only a /, then this gets executed, and if it sees this, then this gets executed. Does that make sense? So it's actually looking at the URL bar. It's not doing anything else. It's just looking at it. Okay, and it keeps track of what's in that URL bar. Okay, so when you plug in create user, then it knows, okay, I see this. It's a get response, or rather it's a post, right? Execute this code, right? That's what this app that's what this decorator does. Pretty cool, right? So yeah,
that's what Jonathan Duke was saying about the admin. So you can put those decorators behind admin control, so people can't have access to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can do there's a package called Login Manager that I can come in here and do login required, right? And then you have to be logged in as a current user in order to be able to access this route, where it'll error out. And
it goes in the same one, or is it created in a class?
No, it's the same thing. And you actually define a route that controls the login manager too. It's a little weird. I'm not going to get into all that because it's not really required. But yeah, this is actually just monitoring that URL bar. Okay, so when we do this forward slash because that's the default. Anytime you just type in a URL, you default to the index, which is always forward slash. So anytime, yeah.
What are these decorators inheriting from? Any of these imports?
This is the application current app that we import from Flask. Okay, the dot route is a method of that. So that's Python script being run. That's doing the actual monitoring. That answer your question? Cool. All right. So the function that follows is just the code that gets executed whenever the route sees, that its unique identifier present in the URL that's been sent, right? So it sees a forward slash, it executes this code. If it sees slash create user, it executes this code, et cetera, so on and so forth.
This would have made the Plotly Dash app so much easier if we did this first.
Plotly Dash uses this.
I know.
Yeah, this is what Plotly Dash does in the background. It just hoists on Flask.
And this is what was so hard about it.
Yeah, but it tries its best to abstract this away, which I think is kind of pointless. You should really kind of need this customizability, in my opinion. But to each their own. Yeah, so what's the purpose of models.py? We've talked about routes. We know what routes do, right? What is models?
It's basically the tables of your database, right?
Yeah, the tables of your database. More specifically, the schema for the tables of your database. That's important. Okay, they define the schema from everything from the data type to whether or not it's a primary key, a foreign key, the number of characters that are allowed there, whether or not it can be null. There's one even unique. It has to be unique. There's all kinds of validators and stuff that you can put in here to kind of control the schema. And behind the scenes, as you can see from app, we're importing DB. So again, that's referencing all the way back here, pulling in this DB right here, right? And bringing that in over here so that we can access this base class and inherit a db.model, right? And then from that, we get, db.column manager, and basically it just constructs a base framework and then inputs our stuff into it, which is really, really nice of them to do because ORM would be much more complicated without that base model. But behind the scenes, once you create this class user, SQL Alchemy is going to use that to convert all of these parameters now, we'll call these columns, right, into SQL query. Okay, so it does all the hard work for you. And basically, once SQL Alchemy determines what type of database it's interfaced with, it will then construct the appropriate SQL query to do whatever it is you're telling it to do, right? To do any particular thing. That'll be insert values, queries like to pull data out, creating tables, dropping tables. You have all of the same functionality through SQL Alchemy that you have really when you're working with the SQL, or rather when you're interfaced directly to the database. Okay, you can execute queries through SQL Alchemy as well. You can just pull out the engine and then run your SQL queries yourself. So there's literally nothing you can do with SQL that you can't do with SQL Alchemy. And at the end of the day, you can just pull out and get direct access as well. That makes sense to everybody?
A little bit. I think I'm trying to use the Twitter stuff to, because I thought we were using the Twitter
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right
variables.
there. I'm gonna stop you right there. I think the TwitOff thing is really cool. I also feel like it was a step above what's expected.
I agree.
Having you guys learn the Tweepy API wrapper on top of figuring out how to integrate Basilica, plus using a classifier in your model, on top of what the heck is Flask, might have been a tad much, if not still really, really useful experience. Okay. But as far as understanding what Flask is, try not to compare it to the twitoff thing. That twitoff example was quite, I think, an order of magnitude maybe more complex than Flask.
So is like the big integer part of Twitter, or is that part of SQL Alchemy? SQL Alchemy.
Twitter requires the use of a big int because of the number of characters in their IDs.
Okay.
That's why you have to use big int. Okay.
So nothing in the method has really anything to do with calling the API in Twitter.
No, not really. Nothing in the models, anyways.
Yeah, nothing in models. That's what I meant.
Yeah, nothing in models. It's just you have to. Basically, what happened was someone tried it with db.integer and it broke. And SQL Alchemy complained saying, this isn't a valid data type, right? And so you were like, okay, what do I need to do then? And they consulted the documents and they found that the ID was too long, so they needed a different data type.
I mean, that's the type of stuff we need in lecture. It's like, we use big integer because we used integer once and it broke, so we're using big integer now. And keep going. Freaking 3 seconds to explain that. Now it's totally clarified. All right.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry that was confusing, but yeah.
Oh, it's not. It's no one's fault, really. I mean, it's just part of the learning curve.
Yeah.
But
What's that?
Could you go back to the init file for a second?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just like, I don't know.
I don't know why I have so many spaces here. I keep hitting enter. There we go.
Yeah, your Pep 8 style is killing me.
Yeah, it's killing me too, man. Trust.
I guess I'm trying to make sense of like the SQL Alchemy is imported here, and then
I called it in the methods. It doesn't really make a difference, but
then it's like further it's like used in the models.
Yeah, models. That's where I called it. All right.
But doing like, I don't know. I don't know. That like connection is kind of confusing me a little bit, and I can't articulate why.
No worries. That's what I'm here for. Let's follow the logic. Okay, I want you to pretend for a moment that you're a Python interpreter. Okay, you read Python. Someone says, "Hey, run this function." So it hands you this file, right? And you start reading. You say, "Okay, from Flask, import Flask." I'm not going to make you read all that, but let's just assume for a second that you had a big old folder of whatnot, and you turn over to Flask and you read all that, right? And you go, okay, I got that. All right, from Flask SQL Alchemy, import SQL Alchemy. You go, okay. So you turn over to Flask SQL Alchemy and you read all that and you find SQL Alchemy and you're like, okay, and you rip that section out and you put it off to the side. Then you come over here and you're like, okay, I want to define this function, or rather this variable DB, and I want it to be an instance of this class, right? So you go ahead and do that real quick. You draw that up and you line all that out with the right defaults. And you go, okay, good. I got a SQL Alchemy object. And you set it down on the table. Okay. Then now you're ready to run this function, right? You got all the way to this point. So you go, okay, I'm creating my app. Create this thing, and you draw up that object real quick, the Flask object, and you set that off to the side. And then you say, okay, in the app, I have to modify this config variable real quick. Oh, it's in config.config. So you go out here. Right, you know that this is instant relative config is false, so you jump out here and you go find this and you read all that, right? You jump back over here and you put that in for the config. You're like, sweet, now I got my config set up. And you set that off to the side. And then they say the db.init app, and we're going to pass app into it. This is a little bit tricky, okay? Now you take your db object and your app object and you go, right? You put a copy of the app object in the DB object. So now your DB object has like this sort of tether to the app object. Okay, they can't be separated now. You set them down. Cool. Now they're like fused, like Gohan and Trunks, right?
But like, isn't the DB object defined within the app object? So that kind of like
outside. So DB is its own thing before we even talk about the app. Okay, but follow me. It's easier, I promise.
Okay.
We've got a fused DB object and an app object now. We set them down. They're tethered. Okay. Now I say with app context open, so I'm opening up a part of the application object. I want to import routes. Cool. Well, I know what dot is because I have the app context open. So I jump over here and I say, okay, where's routes? Yada, yada, yada. There it is, right? Now I'm going to do, you're going to do the same thing you just did with all of these imports, right? So you break out your big book of whatnot and you start looking up all this stuff. All right, you get through Flask current app as app. We go back to the app to pull out that current app part, and we set that off to the side. So now we've got the current app, which is loaded into memory, along with the whole app context, along with the DB object. Cool. Follow me? It gets better.
And this is where my code breaks.
Now we're going to import models, okay? So, and from models, we're going to import DB, okay? Which might seem a little strange. So let's jump over here. Boom. First thing, from app, import DB. Well, where was DB associated with the app? Along that tether, right? When we fused them together, when we did the init app. So it happens right here, okay? These things are inextricably linked in memory now, okay? So when we do this from app import DB, we now have a DB object in our models folder. And so we have all of the information from DB, right? Which happens to include this base class model, which is really nice. Okay, and we construct this user class. But that's it, that's the whole point of it. So if you walk through the logic, first you have an object, then you give the object the app that you just created, and then you import all the routes that use the object. In memory, you have followed, right, a very logical train of thought here, right? Every step of the way, DB was present. It was right there. We had just set it off to the side for a moment.
But in routes or routes, however you want to say it, why would you import DB from models and not like just app?
Good call. I think that you could, but we have the app from current app. And I think the reason why I don't want to do that is because I use it in models from app. So technically that's the same DB.
Okay, that's
coming from
kinda,
the
I
app.
guess is what I was asking because, yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of gets to it. Thanks.
Yeah. No, I can understand the confusion.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. What's
Can
up,
you
Eula?
tell about the current app? Like what? It's a part of the Flask, but when you importing as an app, does it mean that it's an app from init with a connected already with a DB? Because like I'm getting lost when it's like same names.
Current app locates the app Flask class that we initialized. Technically, this variable, oh boy, and this variable are not the same,
Okay.
but they refer to the same thing. So they are the same.
Flask has this current app, which is refers to the init when you created the app with a Flask. It's, okay.
And
It's
and the current app function refers to this Flask class that was created. Okay, that's what it's going to go look for. And so we just refer to that as app primarily for the ability to write that very concatenated decorator. Anything, whatever I blarg, right? I need to now change all of my decorators to be blarg, right? Because that's what I imported the current application as. Make sense?
yeah.
So I name it with a convention. Technically, I'm referring to the app, so I'm just going to name it app.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're using from app import DB, that app is which app is that app in models? That would be
Just
the one you.
once you're inside of routes, you're always referring to the Flask object. Always, when you say app. That's just the easiest way to talk about that. And that's going to refer to whatever you named this. Okay, that's why you want to keep these things named the same, because it can get very confusing when you have multiple maps all pointing to the same object, but they have different names for the same thing. Right? You don't want to be in that situation. So just keep all the names the same. That's what I do. Obviously that changes when you have blueprints, right? Then you have to refer to the blueprint, which is imported, registered in your app. So then you don't have multiple maps pointing to the same thing. You have one map that points to multiple maps that tell you where different things are. I don't even. At that point, yeah, that's why I was like, I don't really want to do blueprints, because unless your stuff is like super big, there's no real need for that level of complexity, but it can be useful. So there's that. But for an app this size, yeah, just one routes file is fine. Any other questions?
So in those import statements, you can just from any object that you have available.
Yeah, from anything here.
Well, yeah, those are.
Yeah.
Or you could skip all of it and put it all in one file.
You can do that. You can put everything in app.py, and then whoever has to go back after you and read that is going to hate your guts. Right? But you could.
If it's Pepe compliant, they can't complain.
Yeah, they can. Trust me.
Sounds like my Dash app.
Yeah. Trust me, they will find something to complain about. Primarily, dude, I had to scroll through like 8,000 lines to find where you did this one import. What's wrong with you, man? He's a freaking psychopath. But yeah, no, if you wanted to, you can put it all in one file.
That's what Control F is for, bro.
I know. All right.
I get it.
Let me.
I would not do that. I would not do that otherwise. But when I spend 90% of my time trying to find one missed call or this.
Yeah. Think about it like this. Yeah, Control F is nice. But what if you had some variation of a variable like 20 times, right?
I get it. Yeah.
But it's like the same name, but then an underscore and some other thing, right? And then you were like, okay, I just need to find the one route that I made that had that one thing in it. And then you're like, okay, that one? No. That one? No. That. You see how that can get frustrating pretty fast?
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be a lot easier if you could just scroll through real quick and find the one you're looking for.
I'm just talking about for a sprint challenge where
Dude, if you want to do your sprint challenge
yesterday. I spent 2 hours yesterday trying to figure out why my predict wasn't working, and it's because I named it prediction instead of predict. So I was typing in predict everywhere, and my variable was called prediction.
Yep, that sounds about right.
This morning.
Who was there? I think it was the second day when I was live coding, and I left an S off one of my variables. It just broke everything. Right? You can't run away from your own spelling errors, man.
But if you click on it, especially in Visual Studio Code, it highlights everything that is the same.
That's true. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I don't think this does. Maybe it does. Nope. Nope, it doesn't.
I'm sure you can do it add-on.
Probably. It's Atom. But that said, I don't really particularly mind. Though I make my own fair share of spelling mistakes, so definitely been haunted.
Well, sometimes I have a baby that helps code, and she touches the keyboard, and then I don't know what changed.
Yeah. Oh, you want to hear something diabolical? I don't mean to
tangent,
you guys. Real quick. The most diabolical thing I've ever heard. There was a over 10,000 line JavaScript code that 2 developers were working on, and when they decided to play a practical joke on the lead developer, they found a random line and replaced the semicolon at the end of it with a Greek comma.
Which looks exactly like a semicolon.
Question mark, actually.
Oh, it's a Greek question mark. That's right. Yeah. It's a Greek question mark. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Well, I also speak a little Greek, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It looks like the Greek question mark looks exactly like the semicolon in any Unicode font. So 2 days troubleshooting, thinking he was crazy. He finally completely eliminates a whole block of code and rewrites it from scratch to get it to work again. And then they tell him that they just replaced one semicolon with a Greek question mark.
That's just a good reference, because now I'll just search for Greek semicolons in my code if something's not working around April 1st.
With Python, you're not going to do that. But I'm just showing you, right? Like the error was telling him exactly where the problem was. He just didn't believe it, right? Like, how do you believe that? Everything looks exactly right. But yeah, typically it'll work like that with Python too. It'll tell you exactly where the problem is, right? So when you did the import, it was probably like from predicts, or rather, referencing this thing and then saying no such variable prediction or predict. And it was telling you what the problem was.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
So tomorrow they're giving us the API, which hint has something to do with our sorry about that. Sorry, study guide. Yeah.
Oh, no hint about it. You're going to be working with the OpenAQ.
Okay, OpenAQ.
Yeah, you're going to be working with the OpenAQ.
I've already been looking
to what
at it.
capacity, we're not going to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, it's massive. Holy crap.
Yeah.
But
if you wanted to get a head start, you might want to look at the documentation tonight, so that way, that's not blindsiding you in the morning.
Yeah, I've got it open.
Yeah.
I already made a folder because I'm trying to save like milliseconds here.
Yeah, I have been looking at it, the documentation, and like I'm telling you,
I'm just sharing.
I'm struggling with the with the documentation, and I even asked my TL, and we couldn't really figure out how to manipulate the URLs to get what we wanted, and
the HTTP.
Yeah,
I can't figure that out.
Like
it's just me.
It's not just you. I was asking like Nick, and he couldn't figure. Like we were like, I'm sure if Nick gave it a bit more time, but he was like, you're gonna figure it out tomorrow. Which I'm sure like tomorrow they give you more hints and stuff. Like from where I stand right now, if I had to work with this data set, like I would not know how.
Okay.
Yeah, because well, they didn't give us. They don't give us like an API key, so there's like.
Examples.
Yeah, there is no API key. That's a good thing.
But yeah, they give you examples of like URLs, and if you search like API dot open, you search the URL / countries, like you get a bunch of data, and then they give you like these parameters to specify like what type of data you want out of it. But then like, do you just keep slashing, or like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I asked that question right when I got in.
Click meter. What is this? QL parameters.
I can hit the open.
Cooper.
Maybe that's the wrong
Cooper,
syntax.
what's up, man?
Yeah, my mic sucks, so that's why I don't talk.
Wait, what?
Just gotta
Mike sucks. That's why he doesn't talk.
Oh, your mic sucks. I was like,
if he talks another like minute, it'll get better.
Thank you for the resource. I will be looking at it, but I would love for
Let me see. So one of the countries is AU. So if I wanted to limit this by country, let me see if this syntax works. Nope, that doesn't do it.
According to Aaron, he said that they're giving us quite a bit of code. We just have to do some of the methods to grab the variables that we need. So I'm hoping that the code they give us fixes that.
Gotcha.
But on another note, honestly, like I've tried working with different APIs, and I swear every time I go to the API and I look at the documentation, I have no idea what to do, and it's always different.
Especially without an API key, I'm like clueless.
Alpha Advantage made sense though.
What?
Alpha Advantage, the one that we went over the other day.
Okay, yeah.
At After Hours, but like, it's the only one I've seen that's like.
Yeah, but they had an API key, right?
Oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
query equals countries equals AU. Oh, invalid.
Eliminate all job opportunities that work with APIs. You're good.
I guess, but I'm just like for
No,
side
don't do that.
projects,
Yeah.
APIs are so cool, but then
I've been wanting to do this specific week for so long. It was so disappointing.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's a tough week. It's a tough week. I feel like I'm gonna have to keep working on this stuff for like ever.
Yeah, me too.
But I also feel
Hey,
that way.
Brandon,
Yeah. What's up?
is it like that NBA API?
Kind of. Why you say that?
Just wondering. 'Cause
Yeah,
they
they
didn't have a key or anything.
Yeah, no, it doesn't have a key. You don't need a key to hit the endpoints. But I can't
How
figure
does
out
that work? How does that work?
You just type in a URL and it shoots back JSON at you.
That's what I was
Shotgun.
hoping.
You just
Yeah,
kinda
exactly.
hope
But
for the best.
no.
Okay,
You just
so
have to
here's,
add a question
oh,
mark.
yeah, you just add a question mark. Here, let me show you. So I'm gonna do this real quick.
And how do you know to add a question mark? Like, how would we?
Oh, that's just, okay.
think
I don't
it's
mean to
just
abstract this away, yeah, but it's a standard practice whenever
Okay.
you're constructing these things. So here I have the first response from V1 cities.
Okay.
And we can see that we have a bunch of countries, AD, AE, AG. What if I just wanted AU, right? Well, if
Can
I
you
look
zoom
at,
in once, please?
Yeah,
What's
what
that?
the heck was that?
Can you zoom in once or twice, please?
say that one more time.
Can you zoom in once or twice,
Oh,
please?
yeah, sorry. How's that? Better?
So
Good.
this is
All
the
right.
API.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, this is what the API is giving you back, right? It's a bunch of dictionary stuff. When we see that we have some keys here, then we have values for those keys. And looking at the documentation says, okay, I can like query certain countries specifically. And it tells me that you have to put in country and string. Now, I can understand why you maybe didn't understand what that meant because it doesn't specify that you have to do question mark country, and now let's do US, right? But you think quotes? No quotes. It's already in string format. So if I just do this, now I only get United States cities back. We can see how that changed, right?
Who needs SQL?
And then we can do, so you can just keep stringing this together, I'm pretty sure. Ampersand, maybe I want to sort descending. Let's try that. I'm just kind of guessing that this is what it's going to be. Yep, that's what it is, right? So it'll be question mark, the first thing you want to do, and then ampersand, the next thing you want to do, ampersand, the next thing you want to do, right?
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, theoretically you could do all of these, and that's how it works.
Awesome.
Now you can see I'm doing, it's in, the names are in alphabetical order. See that?
Thank you.
That's how it works.
Just a question.
I feel like I would have had a very slim chance of
Yeah.
figuring that out.
So-
like,
That's what this is for, man. You know what? I didn't know either. I just figured it out. I just went on there. I was
You
like, I
just
bet
figured it out. Your freaking savant brain was like, no, it's probably question.
no, I had no idea. I was like, but I had
We were
seen,
all thinking it.
I remembered that Alpha Vantage had this question mark query. And so I typed that in and it was like, well, query's not allowed. And I was like, well, maybe if I just take query out, it'll work. So I took the query out and then it worked. So, hey, there you go.
So the question mark is basically, hey, I'm about to start putting parameters.
And I'm not sure, but I think that's a JavaScript thing, isn't it? Or is it a JSON thing? Does anybody know?
I've been
Like with
coding
flat?
for what week is this? Week 11?
Yeah,
I've been coding.
I forget where that can eventually go. But I know that's what it is. Maybe I'll do some research on it. All right. Anybody else have any questions?
Sorry about my typo.
You had a typo? What's wrong?
I was just in the chat. Wheezier. Lazier.
Oh, Wazier.
I was just wondering if you had any of the recordings from the other after hours.
Yeah, they're all in the DS12 After Hours channel. Are you in that channel?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, they should be there. Scroll up a little bit. You should see from Jacob, part 1, part 2, and part 3.
Sweet. Thank you.
I'll put this on part 4. I'll just add to it.
Cool.
This is so cool that you can just copy and paste that stuff in there, though.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, these APIs things, they all pretty much work the same. So not least the.
So if you just wanted country, you would delete measurements and put in country.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Pretty sure.
I think that's what you did.
But I can't remember like exactly what your sprint challenge is going to ask you for to do with this data, and it may give you the URL that you have to hit. So that'd be nice. But it's a good skill to have, right? being able to query APIs is something you'll probably end up doing again in the very near future, either for a labs project or your next build week. So
Doesn't it include everything, even if you don't set any parameters?
So you can probably notice that your
This
initial
API is live.
Yeah, it is. You probably notice that your initial response is limited to 100. It does by default just start from the top of the list and start working its way down by whatever parameters that it defaults to organizing by, which I think is country name or country code. But yeah, you can change that and then increase the number of responses that you get. By default, it's 100. You can raise it up to 10,000. All right, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every API is a little bit different too. Some have no limit on how much data you can get, but they have a limit on the number of queries you can make in a day, right? Some will, I think typical numbers are somewhere between 1,000 to 5,000 hits a day. Can't do more than that.
Yeah, apparently it's tomorrow in a lot of these countries.
Yeah, of course it is. Other side of the earth, man.
That's true. I guess there's only, 2 hours left here, so.
Yeah, or only a couple hours left, yeah. You're on the East Coast, so it's 7, 8, 9, 10. 11. Yeah, you only got like 2 more hours left. But I'm on the Pacific Coast, so, it's all good. I got like the rest of the day. It's still bright outside.
Yeah. No, it's dark.
Crazy, ain't it?
What are you gonna do when you move to Hawaii?
Man, I don't know. Probably get me one of those Sweet Lake beach chairs and just freaking chill. Buy me a laptop so I can code on the beach. Nah,
Well,
I'm
meant
on.
time-wise.
Oh yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be crazy because like whenever
They're like 7 or 8 hours behind.
yeah, it's gonna be like nighttime for me. Still, when
yeah,
like it'll be like now when lecture's starting.
It's like 2 o'clock in the afternoon there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty big time difference, but do what you got to do.
Okay, so do we need to know how to put stuff into a database? Like for tomorrow?
Yes. You'll need to be able to interface with a SQLite database.
What about creating a predictive model and pickling it?
Nope.
Would you mind covering that real quick?
What?
How are we going to give you that database?
Importing.
Yeah, you just send it in a file? Question mark. Like when you zip your package, like you have your whole Flask app done, and you zip it and send it to me. You just include the DB with it. Yeah, just include the DB with it. If you didn't include the DB, but I see that the DB is there in your code and it will be created when I run it, that's good enough for me too. If you get as far as deploying it, then it's really easy to test. I can go on your go on your app and then see if it works, right? Yeah. So you want to cover interfacing with a SQLite database?
Yes, please.
Okay, let's do it. I've been given a task.
It's kind of the whole point.
We had the code or the Alpha Vantage stuff, right? Set up in here.
Yep. Yep. I've got my API calls here. So maybe I want to import this data into a database, right? I can do that. The first thing I would need to do is make sure that I have my environment set up to do so. So again, we're going to back up to the .env. Want to make sure that you have your variable set up with a relative path to a SQLite database. Okay, that's going to be SQLite : and then 3 // for a relative file path. Okay, and then it's going to be just the name that you want this to have. SQLite's maybe a little verbose. I just want to do DB, so I'll just do test.db. Keep it simple, stupid. All right, I'm going to save that. So now you'll see when I run this code, testdb.SQLite won't be the only DB here anymore, right? It's going to create a new one because this is new. Okay, so I'll now head to my models. I'm kind of skipping over all the stuff that we've already done, right? You're going to create the rest of your init. Make sure that you initialize the app to the SQLite Alchemy object or SQL Alchemy object, and then create your tables. That's important. Okay, if you forget this step, then essentially when you go to try to query your database, it'll break saying that there's no, like you'll get weird SQL errors, right? Talking about no engine. and that's what it's referring to. There's no there's no connection, right? You need to create that here. Okay, then we'll go to our models.py and we'll create a model for the data that we're getting, right? So now we want to create a new table, if you will. So I'll create a class. We'll call this open AQ. Okay, I'll just do it like that. And same thing here, import from DB model. I want to give it a table name to make this easier for myself. This is an alias, right? So whenever I refer to it in SQL, I'll refer to this table name. But whenever I'm working with Python, I'm always going to refer to it by its class name. That's important to understand. If you don't include this, the table name by default is this, but all lowercase. Okay? That's what it defaults to. Or I can say, you know, I don't know, air quality. Right? Something like that. Now I can give it my own unique name. I'm going to actually just leave it as OpenAQ. So this is what it would default to anyways. So you can skip this if you want. Okay, next thing to do is give it an ID. This is going to be a primary key. Remember, every table has to have a unique primary key. And I don't know that the data comes with one, so I'm going to make sure that I auto increment my own. All right, so column. It does not matter that it has the same name as another column on another table. Okay, that's allowed.
Do we only have as many columns as we want or are told to get?
Yeah, so it really depends. Give you an example here. I want to make sure that I record pertinent data, right? You might be told on your sprint challenge what data you need to collect, right? And in order to do that, I need to first know what comes, right? And luckily it shows me. I'm going to get city, country, count, and locations. And it's even nice, it shows me what the data type is. I got 2 strings and 2 integers. Pretty awesome, right? So now this pretty much tells me what my schema needs to be. Okay, so I'm going to come back down here and back to my code. And I'm just going to go ahead and actually, you know what? I can do this. Kind of just resize my screens here so I can see this down here and keep typing. So I know I'm going to have city, db.column. If I'm going a little fast, let me know. The string. These can get pretty long, so I'm just going to do 255 as a default. And then this nullable false. That's a good catch-all. Country is next. Yeah, string again. Same thing. It's only going to be 2 characters long, so I only need 2. And then count.
So if you do more, what happens? Does it just leave an empty space, or you'll get an error?
It will error, if I remember correctly. It will complain. It'll break and complain that could not match D-type or didn't match constraints.
You have one like lowercase.
What's that?
You have one lowercase c. I don't know if that's important.
Yep, sure is. Thank you. Locations. All right, and we're going to do db.integer again. Bear with me, this is the pain of live coding, right? This is the process that you would go through if you wanted to collect this information, right? So now I know what I'm getting and I know how I'm getting it. And I have a rough idea that it'll all fit, right? I don't think there's anything that's going to break this. If I wanted to be sure, I could just do 255 on this, but you know, that's up to you, however you want to do it. And then, yeah, I'm expecting 2 integers back. So there we go. Now I've got all my columns defined. I'm ready to create this table and start parsing data, right? How am I going to do that? Well, first I'm going to save this. Then I'm going to jump back over to my routes.py. Okay. And let's say that I want to do this on a different route. Okay. So API call is just going to display the information, but I want to save it to my database on a different endpoint. Okay. So I'm going to do app.route. And I'm going to do save data. Okay. And then methods equals, and this is going to be, I'll just do a get post. Define, save data. Again, your function name does not need to be the same as this, but it does help to reduce confusion. Okay, and now I need to actually process this information. What does that mean? Remember that the way that I get this data is not exactly clean, right? It comes, for starters, it comes in byte data, not as serializable JSON, and it's in nested dictionaries, right? So in order to get at this data right here and put it into a format that's presentable to my class, I need to break it out into a dictionary of key value pairs, right? And the way that I'm going to do that, excuse me, is I'm going to follow the same logic that I used in my template for displaying it, right? So if I go back to my API test, I can see that I did a couple of lines here, looking, or rather digging into the nested dictionaries, right? And we can see, okay, for all the items in data, which, so imagine, right, the first big dictionary. You know, it might actually be easier just to show you. Let's do this again. I think I got time. Famous last words. Let me see what I got here. So I'm gonna launch into Python real quick. From URL lib import request import JSON. Okay, so I need two things. One, I need a package that's going to allow me to do an HTTP request. Okay, that's going to be, in my case, I'm using URL lib request. It's a standard Python library. And then I need something to serialize the JSON once I've decoded it. So for that, I'm just going to use the standard JSON library. Okay, and I'll show you what that means. So then I need to construct a URL. Not a big deal. This URL is pretty simple, right? So I'm just going to copy this real quick to use as an example. Okay. So down here, I need to start a request. So I'm going to say URL equals, and then I want to do request.open URL. That's the from the documentation. This is the method that's going to actually make a request for me and then get a response. I'm going to paste this in and run that. And it has no attribute open URL. Is it URL open? Well, I've forgot the methods, so now I got to go to the URL lib. Documentation to go find the method again. Documentation. Oh, I can get rid of this for a second. Now we gotta go down here. URL open. Oops, I had it the wrong way. Open the URL. Data must be okay. So I just need to rather open this back up and do the same thing, but change this method name. There we go. So now I have this URL thing. What's in there? What can I do with that? It's got a lot of functions. Rather, it's got a lot of methods in it. But the one that I'm interested in is this one read. Okay? I can read the data, rather the response from this URL. But from experience, I can tell you I can only do that one time for some reason, because once you do it, it disappears. So I'm going to save it to a variable. Okay? I'm going to say my data equals URL.read. Okay, now I can look at data and I see that this is that JSON that I see when I do this in the browser, right? And up here, I can see, okay, so it's got some interesting stuff. I see, but I see this B. What does that B mean? Anybody know? What does that B apostrophe mean?
It's in bytes format.
Byte object.
Correct. It's a bytes. It's saying this data type is bytes. Okay, so I'm going to need to fix that first before I can do anything, right? I need to decode this. JSON, enter JSON. In fact, I think I don't actually have to use JSON. I'm pretty sure data.decode UTF-8 would work. Yeah, so data.decode UTF-8 works, but I want to serialize this from its JSON format into Python dictionary. Which is a really cool function that basically it gives you the nested Python dictionary objects back, which is really helpful. So I'm going to use JSON for that. So I'm going to say new data equals JSON.loads. Okay, data, which is the original variable that I saved all this to, .decode UTF-8. Okay. So now I'm breaking it out of its byte format into UF8 encoding, excuse me, rather decoding it into UTF-8 and then loading it through the using the JSON package to get my Python dictionaries out of this JSON. Okay, so now we look at new data and we'll see that it looks a little bit different, right? Because now it's been converted from raw JSON to actual nested dictionaries. All right, and we can confirm that by doing type on it. All right, type new data is a dictionary. Okay, so this is a Python dictionary object, which means that if I do for key in new data, it'll tell me all of the keys associated with this data package. Okay, this is important. This is learning the structure of your response body. Okay, print key. This will show me, okay, I have two keys in this initial dictionary, meta and results. I only care about the results, obviously, so I'm going to break that down. I'm saving that information now, okay? Now I know that the first key that I need to access is results. What's in results? Hopefully, it's that country. It looks like this, right? Hopefully, it looks like this down here. That's what I'm hoping. So let's take a look. For key in new data, now I'm going to reference the key results, print key, and prepare for vomit. Yes, awesome. So now I can see that I do get these all back as keys. That's not good. Oh, it's for key and key. Okay, so the response from this results is all of these dictionaries. So really this should be for dictionary in results, okay? That's awesome. That means it's not nested twice, it's only nested once. So key results gives me the list of dictionaries, if you will, right? Let's confirm that. Let's look and see if that's what that is. I'm gonna do type new data results. It is in fact a list. So I'm gonna need to unpack this list in order to get at these dictionary results, right? So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll say, so I'm gonna index new data results, and now I need to index integer slice only the first result out of here, right? And I get this result back. Now I only have, so I'm limiting myself to one response so I can try to figure out, okay, what do I need to do here? I need to reference this by its numeric thing, right? And I only want this value because I've already stored the keys as columns in my database. So how do I break out these values? Well, the same way that we broke out the results, right? So I could do, you know, for value in new data results 0, right? Print value. Okay, I get the keys back. That's not what I'm after. So I need to change this logic. So I don't want value from this. Maybe I want to specify values. Value. Ah, there we go. So when I iterate over a Python dictionary, by default, it's only going to give me the keys back. I want to make sure that I specify the values. Now I have the logic. I have everything that I need to break this out in a loop, gather up all this data. Okay.
Did you have also done for key value in like item, what is it, like itemize or something, right? To like
items. But I don't care about the keys.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't care about the keys because I know what order it's coming in. It's in the same order every time: city, country, count, locations, right? And I know, and I already have my model set up: city, country, count, locations, right? So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this data out, assign it to a variable, db add, and then go back and do it again in a loop. So for every single thing in this list, I'm going to add a row, and then at the end of it all, commit. Let me show you what that's going to look like. So now that I know how to both get the response, access the response, I now need to put this into Python logic in my script on this route. So let's go back to our routes.py, and in save data, calls OpenAQ API and saves the response in database. All right, Jacob, you still tracking me, man?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Let me know if you have any questions, okay? Stop me because I'm moving kind of fast because I only got like 30 minutes left. Okay, but now that I've done all this in my REPL, I can just kind of go back in here and be like, okay, what did I do, right? I imported my functions up here. I gotta scroll past all this JSON vomit real quick. I used URL lib request to make a request and get it, and then I read it. So let's go ahead and start copying this this process down, right? First thing I want to actually do is make sure that I have the things that I need, and I do have a namespace collision. You guys probably remember this from yesterday, some of you that were with me. So that means I'm going to need to alias my request library, or otherwise it will overwrite the Flask request, and I don't want that, right? So I need to import from URL lib, import request as RQ, so that way it doesn't collide with this request and overwrite it. And I'm going to need import JSON. Okay, so now that I have that in my routes, I have access to these in real time. So let's go ahead and do this. URL.
You're gonna have to go over it because you already did, but why are there two different requests? Just like a brief.
Yeah, Flask has its own function request, and URL lib has a function request. If you import it as request, remember this goes in chronological order.
Right. Yeah, I get that. I get that. You need two of them though. Is like one serving a different purpose or something.
Yeah, this request up here is doing something completely different than this one.
Okay.
Okay. In fact, I think, yeah, this Flask request is checking something specific to the HTTP response coming to and from the route. Okay, it has nothing to do with what I'm about to be using the other request library for. So therefore, they need to be differentiated.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to say rq dot URL open. Same thing now. I want to make sure that I get this newest data. So let me go back over here and collect my URL. Right, and I'm going to slide that on in there. Fantastic. So that's the first part down. What was the next part? Read the data. Right, so I'm going to assign it to a variable using the method read. Okay, so now that I have data, parse it. Okay, so now I need to get this in a readable format. How did I do that? Right, I need to decode it for sure, and I need to load it. Use this JSON.loads to get it out of JSON, and then use this decode method to get it out of bytes format. And this will put it into a Python dictionary that I can easily work with right from my script. So let's do that now. All right, so I'm going to say new data equals JSON.loads, and then data.decode, TF8 because it came off the web. All right, so what do I have now? At this point, new data will be this nested list of dictionaries, or rather a dictionary of dictionaries. And it's going to have two dictionaries, or two key values pairs. First one is meta, second one is results. I know that everything I need is in results, so I want to break that out. What do I mean by break that out? I mean assign it to another variable, right? I can say new data, so I'm going to overwrite the original new data that I just created and say that equals new data results. Okay, and I'm going in chronological order, and there's a reason why I'm overwriting instead of making a new variable. It's easier on memory. Okay, if you have a very large response object, creating multiple instances of it could be a little consuming for memory. So I'm going to just overwrite this variable multiple times until I get what I want. But this is as far as I need to go. Luckily, this isn't nested too much more than that. Now I'm ready to organize a for loop to create my rows. Okay, here's the fun part. I didn't specify. I need to import my model because I'm going to be referring to it as a class object. So I need to import OpenAQ. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop over this, which is now a list of dictionaries. Okay. And for every dictionary, I'm going to pull out all the values and plug them in to a OpenAQ object. Okay. Each object is going to be a row. Let me demonstrate. So I'm going to say for, or rather, I'm going to loop over this list of dicts to extract the values. Okay, so we're going to do for row in new data, because now new data is this list of dictionaries. Okay, rather, I need values. Remember, how do I know I need values? Because when I did this up here, if I did, excuse me. Rather, nope. Okay, so I missed a step. This is why checking after yourself is really important. I missed a step here. I need to reference the integer slice of each object. So what do I need to do? I don't need to do for row in this, and I need to do it by number. Okay, so I'm going to say for I, or index, or location, whatever you want to choose for this variable, in length of new data results. And that is going to basically increment I from 0 to the end of the last index of new data results. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to pull out for value in new data results with this. Now that's going to be I, right? Let me show you what that looks like. For row, yeah, no, I'll say for data, for value, and naming conventions are hard. New data results, and then I. Okay, so now I'm going to index the results body that I got back in a loop. Okay, and I want to do something. I'm going to loop through that. Okay, and I want to loop through its values, right? Because remember, if I just do this, then I only get the keys back. I need the values. Values are what matter here. There we go. So it's a nested for loop. Not the best way to do this, but it'll work for now. Okay, keeping the logic simple and easy to follow. And what I'm going to get back is these values for every single thing, right? So I know as it loops through, yeah, this is going to be the first object, second object, or rather, first item, second, third, fourth, fifth. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why does that not look right? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm missing something. Name? Missing name. Never too late to go back and check yourself. That's going to be a string. Throw in 255, make it simple. There we go. Save that. Okay, now I have all the fields I'm going to need. Okay. So I want to create a tuple. And let me do that here. Okay, follow my logic here. Okay, I'm going to construct a tuple. Is that how I want to do this? I don't want to do this. No, they're always going to be in the same format. I want to make a list. Okay, I'm going to say row equals list. Okay, I'm going to create an empty list. And for every value that I pull out of here, I'm going to append it to this list in order. Okay, that's how I want to do this. So I'll say for value in new data results, index I, the values from each key, row dot append value. What is that going to do? Each time row gets hit, right? For each iteration, row is going to be a list of all of these values in this order: country, name, city, count, locations. Okay. Anybody see where I'm going with this? What comes next?
You're eventually going to put that all back in the database.
Yeah, I need to.
Because it's an order of the components of that object that you made, or like that table that you made, the schema of it.
You got it. So now I need to create this object, OpenAQ, for this row data. Okay, so this part's done. I'm going to come down here below it. Now, once this is complete, okay, I want to construct the class. Okay, so I'm going to say row data, okay, because this is all the data for the row, equals OpenAQ, the class. And remember, each of these names, or rather, each of these variables is a column name, right? I don't need to specify ID because it's a primary key. It will auto increment. I don't want to mess with the ID, okay? But I will input name, city, country, count, and locations. So that's what I'm going to do. Name equals, and what do I know? I know that name is the first thing, rather country is the first thing. So country needs to be first, right? Make sure that that's, yeah, it'll be country, name. It doesn't matter what order they go in. It doesn't matter what order I put them in, okay? And let me be clear about what that means. I'm going to index row 0, right? It's the first thing that comes in this row, right? Is the country code. The second thing is the name. Name equals row 1. Anybody see where I'm going with this? City equals row 2. Right? Count equals row 3, which I actually think is county. I'm not really sure what count is, to be perfectly honest. It's going to be row 3. It doesn't matter. And that doesn't make sense. What did I miss? Country, name, city. Country, name, city, count, locations. I didn't miss anything. Locations equals row 4. Yeah, it's 5 things. Okay. Now I'm going to break these down for aesthetics and Pepe compliance. That. There we go. So now I've constructed, I'm still in my loop, right? I'm still in this part of the loop. So now I want to commit, or rather add this row data for commit, right? So now I'm going to do db.session.add. Okay. What does that do? That prepares this row data item for addition to the database, but nothing's actually done yet. But I want to do this multiple times. I want to create multiple row entries, right? So for every dictionary in this list, it's going to create a new row, execute, pull out all the values from the dictionary, and then construct another object and add it. Everybody tracking so far? Cool. Then I just had to come out of here, db.session.commit, and we're done. That's it. Now it's going to systematically go through each of these things and commit it to the database. So if all goes well, it works. And I'm going to return something simple. I'll just return success, right? Just a string, just so I know that when I hit this endpoint, if it worked or not. Okay, if it gets to this point, it'll return success. Else I'll get like some weird obscure error. So let's check it out. Let's see if it works. We're going to go back to, yeah, I'm just going to check over everything. Yeah, read, loads, decodes. Yeah, there we go. Gets the results. My funky loop, session.add multiple times, and then at the end of it all, commit, and then return success. Cool. Looks good to me. Look good to you guys? Everybody think this is going to work?
You said session.add multiple times?
Yep. It's going to add each row.
Okay, got it. So you don't need a session.add in each for loop. You just need one in the.
Yeah, no, it's going to
because you only want the nested for loop, really.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it constructs this, and then it does this, and then it goes back, makes a new row, does this again, does this again, and then adds that, and then so on and so forth, right? That's the logic. And then once it breaks out of this for loop, it's done with all of this, then it commits. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
And returns success. Okay.
Excuse me. Do we have to specify what we are adding? In that session.add, do we have to specify we are adding?
Oh, yeah, you do. Hang on. This needs to be row data. Yep, you're absolutely right. like to miss that one. You guys are gonna let me slide on that, right? You got to add the row data, otherwise it's not adding anything, right? So we're gonna add row data, and then at the end we have to commit. We don't put anything in here though. That's just gonna save the changes that we added. Okay.
Would you close the session too, or is that not something you would do in this?
You don't need to. It's technically implied.
Gotcha.
Yep. All right. So let's run it and see if it works. All right, so we'll recall that my endpoint is save data. No pressure. Hope it works. Nope, didn't work. List indices must be integers or slices, not string. What does that mean? It didn't like this. List indices must be integers, not strings. And I can go in here and actually see the same thing. So it didn't like that. But I recall that was a list.
Should you wrap length and range? So range of the length of new data results. Would that work?
No, it should be range of length of new data results.
But you only have length, you don't have range.
Yeah, I know. Maybe that's what it is. But it seems like it's complaining that it's slicing a list, but it shouldn't be. Let's check it out.
I also did the same thing though, that like the range thing, and that was my problem.
So it'd be range of length. So this fixed it for you?
Yeah, because the length is an integer. The range makes it something iterable.
Well, rate, do you need to put in 0 to start, or
You don't have to.
have
If
to?
you just have one number in there, it's gonna create by default from 0 to that number.
No, you see what the problem is? Come on, guys. Dang it. This is wrong. I'm going to take that out. I'm going to take this out. I've already did that. I forgot that I did it right here. Okay, so I just have to take this part out because I overwrote new data with the string, or rather the key results, right? So now I'm just working with new data, and then iterate over the range of the length of it. Okay, let's fix that real quick. So if you had results on the end of this, if you were following along, I don't know if any of you are, you would take that off because we already did that. Right? Now we're trying to get the results of results, and that's not going to work because it's a list. So again, the error was right. I was wrong. Right? That's typically how it goes. The problem is usually between the screen and the chair when stuff goes wrong. So let's check it out. Woohoo! Success!
Okay.
Right on. All right. So let's check it out. If all went well, we should see that we have, rather there should be a new database in here. There's not. I'm a little concerned. Oh, yeah, no, it's gone. Let me check this out quick.
With the extension of SQLite, I don't know
Your
that-
database updated 1 minute ago. Your test DB.
Oh, did it? Where'd you see that? Yeah, it sure did. So it didn't actually change. It didn't change the name of my database. That's funny. I wonder why it didn't change the name of the database. Huh. Weird.
Is it not the extension?
I changed it here.
Did you not save that or something?
No, I did. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, saved. Being funky over here, man. Maybe if I delete it. Let me try. This isn't going to work because it's currently open, so make sure that it is closed. Close this. Then I can delete this. All right, now it's gone. And redo this. I should see it pop back up immediately, and it goes straight back to TestDB SQLite. Okay, I don't know. I don't know. This is just what it's gonna be. I can't change it. So it's decided that that's the name of the file, and there's nothing else that's going to work. And we see that we get success. So now, if we query this database, right, we should get a response. Let's look at that real quick. cd into my app. So now I'm going to go into Python. I'm going to from SQLite, or rather import SQLite 3 as SQL, right? Con equals SQL.connect test db.sqlite.
What if you tried it with the other name?
It won't work because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Equals con dot cursor.
What's the problem with it being in the app folder or the app package?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Oh, okay.
Because in production, you're not using SQLite 3. You're using Postgres. That you should, if you are using SQLite 3, you're wrong. All right. Select star from, and what did I name that? It was OpenAQ, right? Remember, it's going to be all lowercase because that's what it defaults the actual table name to. All right. So hopefully, if this ran correctly, we should get a response from this. Oh, we need to do fetch all. Booyah. So this gives us back all of the data that we just saved to our database. And I did it live, and I did it in 30 minutes. Right? Had some errors, but we worked through it. So there it is. It can be done. And it's not pretty, right? Give me another 5 minutes, and I could probably get a half-decent template like I have for the other one to display the data. But at the end of the day, it's all the same, right? It's here. Does anyone have any questions about what I just did?
Oh, it's perfect.
So-
It makes sense right now until tomorrow when I open up the freaking sprint challenge.
You were like, man, what did he do? remember
Disappearing ink instructions.
Yeah, I'll have Jacob take all my videos down when the thing starts. No, I'm just kidding. Remember, the key was,
Nobody laughed at that, buddy. Not one person.
no, not one person.
Send the links right now.
Yeah, the key was I started from the top down, right? I said, let me work with this in the REPL, figure out what I need, right? Keep a document, or rather, I save a record of it so I don't lose all this data, right? And then I just replicate everything that I did for this one particular use case in my code, right? Using loops where I want to do repetitive action, right? So I know I'm going to need multiple rows, and I'm going to need to pull all the data out, right? So I'm going to create loops for that. This is the part, if you had to do something like this, I don't know that you have to, but if you had to do something, this is probably the part that would confuse most of you, all right? Is that generally the consensus?
Not me.
No, you got to think about loops, man. Unhealthy.
I can do it if I know what I'm trying to grab.
Okay, gotcha.
So like if I knew I was if I knew I had a tuple of like country name, city, like I could get it then. But just coming up with this off of no, I'm not that good yet.
Well, the more you do it, the better you'll get. So I
Yeah.
would say don't time yourself for anything, and definitely don't compare yourself to me.
But
I've
we're
done this
timed. We only have 3 hours.
Well, you have 3 hours. I just did it in 30 minutes, my dude. All right.
I mean, some of us
And
are
that was
natural born savants at coding,
It can be done, but don't time yourself because listen, focusing on the clock is just going to make this feel like it's taking way too long.
Oh, it's horrible.
Right? Yeah, that's a quick way to set yourself up for failure.
I get one of those big turn dial clocks that you can hear tick. And I just put it right above my computer.
Don't.
You gotta get some tunes.
Yeah, I listen to jazz literally the whole time.
Yeah, don't time yourself, guys.
Hey,
Work through the process as efficiently as you can. Skip what you need to skip if you can. Right?
I was following you and like coding, and I had such a weird error. Like it says that I don't have a columns name this or that. Like,
Really, Jacob?
Come on.
I'm sorry, Yulia. What did you say? I'm sorry.
That's funny. I was following your code, and I got stuck. Like I got an error. Like I did everything what you did, and it says OpenAQ has no column named name.
Okay, go back because I had to add name, right?
I did add name. It has OpenAQ has no column named name.
If the table exists and you ran your code, then that means it created the table without the name column. You will need to drop the table and remake it. Otherwise, it will not update. Okay?
Oh, I have to delete table and create it again. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Let me show you how you can do that. Okay?
Okay.
Well, actually, just delete the database file. That's the easy way to do it.
Literally.
Or you can migrate.
I know. I tried this before.
Yeah, I don't use migrate. I don't really know how that works, but yeah, if you know how to use migrate, I think it will allow you to update your tables.
In migrate, I'm also just deleting them and just running the code again, and it's appears there. Okay, I'll try it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I was just why this
We did the reset. Oh, sorry.
I was just wondering why it made more sense than in lecture, and the lack of is definitely a contributing factor.
What's that?
The lack of migrate in this example makes. I have no idea what migrate has ever been doing.
I asked. I actually was in a staff meeting, and I actually said, "What the heck is migrate? I've never heard of it. I've never used it." I was like, "I just use app context and create all, and it works." He was like, "Yeah, that's another way to do it." Right? So there's nothing. Again, the way that works is the right way. If it works, it works. If it don't, do it a different way. Right? That's really what it boils down to at the end of the day.
I was also creating the app with without migrate. Like I had the mimicked Mike's code, just like for example, and the way you did, but like I upgraded like my app with having more like pages and everything. But I don't know how to connect it to the database with like Postgres. Like with the migration, I understand that Mike has this, that he can have to like get keys and everything, but I don't know how to do this without migration. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, you're gonna have to. Well, basically, you need to update the configuration variable. So this thing right here will need to be changed, and I think I know why it's not working. I think I have to leave my pipenv and then re-shell into it in order to get this to update. By the way, but you would have to change your DB address, which again translates into SQL Alchemy database URI. Okay, you need to change this to be the actual URL, right? Which is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is looks something like this, and then is it like that? Username, password, at.
Oh yeah, I do have that. I didn't know that it has to be changed there. I just add some stuff to configurations, you know. I was thinking it's gonna work like that. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So if this is the SQL Alchemy database URI, you need to change this to be the connection URL to your database.
Okay, thank you.
We're not going to have to do a Postgres or anything like that. Just
no. You can do everything local. If you choose to update, if you choose to upload to Heroku and you leave your SQLite, I'm not going to take points off for it. But if you were deploying a real application that really need to have maintained data consistency, then you're not using SQLite, you're using Postgres.
Yeah, that's not that big of a deal though.
No, not in terms of the sprint challenge. Okay, so that's strictly for your own knowledge.
I'm just trying to eliminate all the busy work.
Yeah, for your sprint challenge, yeah, you should absolutely focus on MVP.
MVP, yeah.
Yeah, everything is secondary, including styling. All right, cool. Well, guys, it's 8:05. Hard to believe, but we're on the precipice of greatness here. We're about ready to end today and, get into tomorrow and do the sprint challenge. How y'all feel?
Horrible.
I can stop sharing now.
Horrible. Good, actually. But knocking on wood until tomorrow morning.
Andy, your app has to do something.
Yeah, I know.
Like, shh, don't ruin it. Right on.
No, more nervous about this than I was the freaking OOP.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought OOP was more like a shock.
Yeah,
It was.
definitely
It
was.
Yeah, you guys
I
were
was
like,
like 3
what?
hours? Yeah, buddy. It's not gonna happen in 3 hours.
And now OP seems like it wasn't that even difficult.
No, it's just, I think
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah. Oh, wait till we get to Unit 4. Woo, boy.
Come on,
Yes.
everybody was saying that Unit 3 is the hardest one. Let us
It's
be
the
that
most
way.
shocking. It's such a change of pace from like the two Ryans, right? Because the two Ryans are like, yeah, go. You know, they have so much energy, and then everything's fast paced, and you have these tasks, right, that are like super scoped. But then you get to Unit 3, and it's like, yeah, you're just like building an app or something. Like,
No, they're
Well, no, the
way
US
better
has-
organized.
right? Like you're gonna put some functions in a class. I don't know. Just make it. You know.
This unit reminded
Right.
me of college where a professor, this is a first year professor who got like a veterans lecture notes and syllabus, and they're like, I'll piece this together in class. I'll do it live. I don't care.
It's just
It's like,
ironic. I'm not, you know what, just going to keep my opinions to
Yeah.
myself on that one. But
I think he did a good job for what he had. Like I said,
no, he did a fantastic job. Let me be clear. When Alex was teaching this, I know a lot of you guys have watched Alex's lectures. Everyone hated Alex, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, it was very bipolar. It was either you completely hated, not her. Let me rephrase. You either hated the way she taught it or you loved the way she taught it, right? And it's the same thing. And I think it's Unit 3. You either love it or you hate it.
Someone's
right?
you got to blame. Yeah, you're gonna blame.
I don't think
someone
it's
for your
I don't think it's the professors. I think it's the unit.
Yeah.
I think everyone just takes to it a little bit different.
I agree.
Maybe
Yeah.
and maybe one
All our
teaching
fault.
style. Yeah, exactly. It's all y'all's fault. You guys ruined it. But no, I think maybe if we just had multiple ways of teaching the same thing, right? We kind of get material out there that works for everybody.
But thanks for the supplementary stuff because I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also I'm glad it helps. Hopefully you guys will walk into tomorrow feeling a little bit better and a little bit more prepared. So
It would have been a lot different without your after hours.
yeah.
Every Thursday,
Well,
baby. She's like, I'm not gonna sleep tonight.
let's see after the sprint challenge. It'll be the same result or not.
Yeah. I'll be like, Brandon, you suck.
And he'll pull it up. Shit.
Your Yelp review is gonna suffer.
Hey, did you guys hear about the app that got released? They called it Ding Talk in China. It was in Wuhan, China, and the schools were like, "Oh, you know what? We can do to stay working is we'll distribute
We'll upload
homework
it."
on this app."
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
And the students were like,
I'll
I don't want to do
download it.
this. No, it tanked from 4.9 to 1.8 overnight.
They got the app taken off the store.
Yeah, they got
Yeah,
it taken
that's
out of the
right.
store. Like, yo,
oh my god.
I was like, bro, that's gotta suck.
So good.
Whoever made that app is gonna be like sitting there like, are you freaking kidding me right now?
Coronavirus killed his app.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
the
is so
students were like,
interesting.
we'll just get taken off the app store, then we got to do homework. Screw that.
Love communism.
So you're telling us all we have to do is downvote Lambda and we won't have to do this anymore?
Don't do that. Please, God, don't do that.
Straight from Brandon.
No, I gave you all the idea. But yeah, no, it's just they all came together and worked toward a common goal. I guess just in some way you got to applaud that, right? And they really had that coordinated. But yeah, good luck tomorrow, everyone. Make sure to get some rest, and for those on the East Coast, definitely get some shut eye because getting started here in just a few hours.